Kia ora everybody, what's up? It is robett. Welcome to robett Live. Another episode. We are just pumping them out, just smacking back to back to back to back, like Drake said, back to back. And we have a Kate Sheehan, director, lawyer, legal whiz on all sorts. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you guys going over there in the States?
A-okay. Missed my flight back by 4 hours to hit the quarantine thing. Stayed here, and then 2 days later we got on lockdown. So it's been they'll teach me as well. But no, it's all good. Family's good and safe, and that's kind of the main thing. And
That's the main thing.
Anyway, in the States, I mean, it seems that San Fran's done a pretty flipping good job compared to a lot of other places in America right now. It is gnarly. So
Yeah.
but anyway, hey, really appreciate your time. I am also
Thanks.
aware that you share the same space as another lawyer friend, battle of it's called Brent Norling. Do you guys like law battle it out, or how does it? Do you guys fight over the coffee machine? How bad is the beef?
Oh no, we don't fight over the coffee machine. We're pretty reasonable at our office. Sometimes there's a few disputes over using somebody else's coffee capsules, but other than that, it's not too bad.
Um, I thought it'd be good. Maybe you could just quickly introduce yourself to the crew, who you are, what you're about, and who you're about to sue. Go nuts.
Okay, so I'm Kate Sheehan of Kate Sheehan Lawyers. I basically act for business owners and people personally in their capacity as directors or personally in their own name. And so, so I'm assisting a lot of business owners at the moment with a lot of claims, in particular in relation to business interruption insurance. And insurance is one of my key areas, along with property disputes and court and civil litigation generally. So yeah, that's me. And if you need any help, just let me know.
You don't go for the sell at the start. You haven't said any cool shit yet that then they know that you know what you're doing. We'll get there at the end. But
Well, we'll get there.
There's been two people out of all the people that I've talked to that have pre-written in things that they would like to discuss. And so first was Rod Snodgrass, and then second is you, Kate. So well done. So we will work our way through this list, because I think that not only is every single person in business thinking about, I actually think every single person in business has thought about law or lawyers or calling lawyers in the last 2 or 3 weeks for a multitude of reasons.
That's right. Yeah.
What is the top two questions that you've been asked by business owners in the last 2 weeks?
Okay, one of them is whether or not they should make a claim on their business interruption insurance cover and whether they're going to be covered. And secondly, whether the wage subsidy is actually going to cover some of the rental expenses. That's probably the second question.
Well, let's jump to that first one.
Yeah.
What is the answer?
So the answer is yes, you should make a claim.
Yes.
You may be declined on your insurance claim, but you should let the insurer decide, because until you make a claim, you can't like, until it's covered or declined, you can't challenge it. So basically, a lot of brokers don't want you to make claims. Potentially insurers don't want you to make claims because it floods them with claims. But if you don't make one, then you never know if you're going to get covered or not.
But you're paying for it. Stuff it.
That's right.
Go for it.
That's right.
And I guess they'll have the only variance will be, I guess, the excess, but which will be a lot less than the loss for their business anyway, right?
Yeah, most excesses are like 500 to 1,000, maybe a little bit more. So you could cover that.
And their claims are going to be obviously a lot higher than that.
That's right.
Just random one. I just I keep thinking about these flow-on effects. Is there a possibility insurance companies could go bust?
Well, if what happens in America potentially happens, there is the potential for insurance companies to go bust or to end up with no money, because what they're trying to do in America is make the insurers cover business interruption losses, even if they have exclusions in the policies, which is a really interesting concept. And that's really what they're trying to do in America.
Oh, so the government doesn't have to front it, so the insurance companies can.
So the government's saying, well, we've copped enough payments and compensation. Now it's up to the insurance companies to fork out their money. And so we'll enact legislation and override your exclusions in your policies and make you pay.
Dude, that is some savage shit. Can they do that? I guess they can, right? It's the government.
It's really interesting because it's happening in New York and Massachusetts right now, I think. So there are a couple of the jurisdictions, I think there's 4 different states which are trying to do that. And then what they're trying to do is cover the businesses that have about 100 to 150 employees. So mainly small to medium-sized businesses, mainly in the hospitality, tourism, restaurants kind of sector.
Yeah.
So they're trying to cover them so that they can actually continue after the lockdown period.
Got it.
Yeah.
So number one that you've been asked is about business interruption insurance. The answer is yes, try and go for it and
Just make a claim.
make a
Yeah.
claim. So make a claim.
That's right.
Okay. And then should they be claiming from when to when? How, like, is there parameters around what they should or shouldn't be doing if you're going to go for your business interruption insurance? Any tips on how they should?
Yeah, you can support your claim with financial information, especially in relation to your turnover from the previous year to the current, year, and your rental expenses should also be included. In terms of, that's the other issue, is obviously business owners are saying, well, we've got to fork out all this rent even though we can't operate our businesses. So that should be definitely included in the claim.
Which actually probably plugs very neatly into that second piece. The rents, leases for business owners. What do or don't people know? Because there's obviously a clause that I've been made aware of that people have been talking about for this no access clause something. Can you just quickly explain? We've had Brent on talking about it a little bit before, but it becomes more and more that a lot of other people don't actually know that they that it actually accounts for their lease. Can you quickly maybe talk around that ones, particularly with the no access clause, and what that means for businesses?
Yeah, so in the standard ADLS agreement form, which is the standard form which most leases are based on throughout New Zealand, it's not applicable to Auckland only, it applies generally to just about everyone. There is a clause, and I think it's 27.5 of that particular lease agreement, which says that in the event that you cannot access, like it's all on access to your property. If you can't access your property, then you have to pay a fair proportion of the rent. Now, us lawyers and valuers and everyone like to dispute what a fair proportion actually means.
Yeah,
so,
what does fair mean? And the law is, was that one of those things where after a judgment's made, everyone uses that as the stake in the ground for what it is, and that probably hasn't happened yet, right?
It hasn't happened yet, and I think it probably might happen in future, and then there'll be a determination. But generally, what people are doing are kind of going 50%. Let's just split it down the middle. And I mean that there's nothing wrong with that, but there are some businesses that maybe that's not actually fair because of other reasons, like other expenses on top of that. Because there's not only just the rent, there's power and OPEX and other things, parking, like on top. So a lot of people are looking at what is a fair proportion, and most people are trying to agree, but there will be cases, as you know, where people don't agree on what the fair proportion is. Yeah.
Oh, the bro, Lloyd Buds jumped in. Kia ora, team. Oh, Lloyd, how are you, mate? He's an absolute legend. Do you know Lloyd?
Mr. Yeah, Lloyd, I know Lloyd. Hi, Lloyd.
Yeah, say what up. See, Lloyd, you're getting some props. Hey, we got a question here from Stuart. Are brokers prepared for losses of this nature, or is this a learning curve for the whole industry?
I think brokers generally are very concerned because if there's this like big inundation of claims, and then all the premiums are like deferred for 6 months, they're not going to get they're not going to get paid, like they're not going to get their kickback off the insurance policies. So I think brokers are concerned about A, for themselves, but B, what it means for clients as well, because it's going to be really interesting moving forward to see whether new business gets underwritten. Like, just say you want to start up your new company, are you going to be able to get insurance? I mean, I don't know the answer to that at the moment, and a lot of brokers are struggling to get cover for existing clients, yet alone new clients. So I think it is going to shake up the whole insurance industry and brokers as well. Yeah.
So good question, Stuart. Basically, everyone's going to have some challenging times ahead.
Yeah, that's right.
Interesting that, eh? So I love it that you've got, because I obviously don't plan anything, but you have given some great points. We've got 5 points you'd like to cover. Business interruption insurance claims, done.
Yeah.
Number 2, wage subsidy. You said the wage subsidy, but it only helps with keeping employees on hold. There is not much in it for the business owners who are grappling with covering all of the costs and dealing with their insurers and banks. Also, even if you claim the wage subsidy, you may have to pay it all or part of it back. Oh no shit! If you get business
Yeah.
interruption cover, oh, so if you get the
Yeah.
subsidy and then if you get your insurance claim comes through, you got to flip it back.
That's right. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know, they don't understand that. They're wondering, look, if I spend all this money now, what's going to happen? I've had a lot of questions. Can we use the wage subsidy money to pay our rent? Because that's the most pressing expense. And I think, like, to be honest, it's not meant to be for that. It's meant to be for employees' wages. But if businesses don't pay the rent, then how are they going to keep going? So it's a really tricky question. And it's going to end up with what business owners think they should do. But basically, the government has created this now register of employers, so it shows who actually got the wage subsidy, right? So there's going to be public accountability or accountability against the business owners and directors personally, I think. So it's a real tricky issue for business owners.
Because there's two trains along it. One is I saw, New World had applied in for it, and then they retracted theirs back. But also I've heard some stories in certain businesses, and without getting anyone in trouble, that I'm probably not the biggest fans of people going for the wage subsidies and not actually giving it to their employees.
Well, that's right. And that's going to be really interesting to see what happens there, because some people have applied for the wage subsidy based on, say, 10 employees, and then maybe they make like 8 redundant. So then what happens to the money?
Yep.
Like, do they have to give it back? I would say probably, but the business might have gone under potentially by the time they have to give the money back. So it's going to be a real interesting question to see how they're going to claw the money back.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about the moral and ethical compass of many decision makers, because I can almost guarantee that a lot of these potentially, let's just call them, sneaky bastard bosses, went and got all this cash off there. I don't think they realize there might be a public register for their employees
right.
and what they have. And so the example I had, I've got a friend, gave me a call, blah, 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 blah. They didn't tell them that it got redundant, basically, but found out that the company had actually got cash for it.
For them.
And then he's sitting there like, wait a second, because then he looked up at the thing. So let's follow this thing through. They're an employee of a company. The company's like, applies for the wage subsidy, takes the cash in, makes them redundant, pisses off. They find out about it. I can almost imagine there is going to be a shit ton of bad blood and potential lawsuits and legal ramifications for all of those companies who've done some sketchy stuff during this time.
That's right. There will be.
What would that look like? How does that happen?
Basically, it ends up probably in a personal grievance from the employee's point of view with the employer in the employment court or in New Zealand. So in that particular instance where he got made redundant, I think he's got a good case to get the money for the wage subsidy at least.
Hell yeah.
But the thing is you got to spend some money to get some money back, right? That's really the problem. So people are going to have to start advocating for themselves a lot more in terms of those particular employment claims to be able to get the money back, because or else they're going to end up spending more money in legal fees or fees than what they're going to get back potentially. So
let's take the shitty American legal attack at this. There's this massive wave of commission win by commission law firms that pop out after this to go after them, and it's on a is it no win no fee shit. Does that exist in New Zealand? Is that a thing?
It kind of does exist in some firms, and you can kind of do that. But what you can't do is you can't take a percentage based on the win. So if you were going to do that, you would have to say, look, okay, I'll charge you this is what I would charge you anyway, just say $3,000 to do all this work for you. So at the end of it, I'll take the $3,000 off you, and it will be more like a fixed fee, I think, to be able to make it work. Because or else you can't take percentages of what they get in New Zealand. You can in Australia and America and other jurisdictions, but you can't do that here.
Yeah, maybe. There's going to be a wave of. I mean, the classic one in America is when you'll see, pharmaceutical companies, and they'll do ads around, did you take this? Did you get hurt? And then they just go straight at it. I'm guessing that's probably good that New Zealand doesn't have all the same vibe like that, because it probably would make it a bit more not as gnarly, maybe. No, I'm not sure.
I think.
So you go.
I think that in New Zealand, a lot of people try to negotiate and mediate, and I agree with that approach. I mean, basically 80 to 90% of the time it works, but there's that 10 to 20% of the time when you're never going to be able to get a result that way. So unfortunately, it only leaves you with the only remedy, which is to go to court.
Lloyd jumped in the mix. He said, Lloyd Budd, who's the director of commercial property for Bailey, said, should the government be doing more?
Well, yes. I mean, I think for business owners, they definitely should be doing more right now. In terms of the main concern and the main issue for business owners is being able to pay their rent and continue with their business. I mean, if this drags on for like another 6 months, a lot of businesses are not going to make it. I mean, even maybe 3 months, you know. So that's the main concern for business owners. And so far in New Zealand, there hasn't actually been a scheme that comes up for relief for business owners in this space. Now, in the UK, there has, like the UK's, the UK has got a business interruption loan scheme, which is really interesting. So they're saying, well, if you we'll loan you the money, and then you'll have to pay it back. But they're actually helping businesses with their rent expenses. Specifically, cool. Whether in New Zealand that hasn't happened, and so I think it definitely needs to happen. And I think that the government is looking at it at the moment, and I really hope that they come up with something for business owners, because I think, or else we're going to have a big problem.
Well, that first wave was, you know, with the wage subsidy for the employees. Obviously, the banks have come out. There's, you know, up to $500,000, and the government said it'll back up to 80% of all these different loans for, I don't know, overdrafts loans or bits and pieces. But then there's this. You're exactly right, especially around commercial, because it's the same question of, do the leaseholders have to pay the lease owners, and then who fronts those bills? Because obviously they've got things as well. So
that's right.
Yeah, so you're basically saying, cool, employees are taken care of to some degree, and now it's the employer's time to get a little bit of love. What would that look like,
I think so.
In an ideal scenario?
In an ideal scenario, I think they need to stop or just have cover for all businesses, because at the moment the loan scheme does not help business owners who earn a turnover of under 250K. So a lot of self-employed business owners, sole operators, tradies do not meet that 250K turnover. So they need to actually start looking at helping out those businesses, and which is basically all businesses. Yeah.
Yeah. Sean Driley, the CEO of SPS Bank, was talking about that the other day. He didn't reckon it was high. He reckoned it was too high. It should be. I think
it's too high. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when a lot of the one-man bands, one-woman bands, the solopreneurs, you know, all the rest of it that sit around, you know, the 150 mark.
That's right.
Yeah, they're out of the mix, and they still have, you know, maybe a bunch of different expenses. It's just a really, like, corporates, big publicly listed companies have plans for these days, but then it's kind of weird there hasn't been a plan that everyone had known about, and we're like, they're creating it and coming up with it and creating it, coming up with it. Like, surely at a government level, shouldn't there already be like an exact pandemic rollout plan of what's going to happen everywhere? Like, surely this shit was planned somewhere, right? Like, if corporates do it, they're publicly listed, shouldn't governments do it? I mean, I don't know anything about politics, but surely there should have been.
So.
Yeah.
I think New Zealand has always geared up for natural disaster events. So obviously earthquakes, you know, we've geared up civil defence for all of those eventualities or possibilities. And I mean, that's probably the main risk in New Zealand is earthquake or natural disaster damage. And so I think they probably have focused more on that than pandemics, maybe, and that's just my personal view. But there's no reason why they can't kind of translate some of the policies that they implemented from that to the pandemic, you know, side of it, maybe.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because it's clear they're making things as they go to help us, but at the same time, you know, every small business owner didn't have a pandemic plan. Every small business owner, like, that's not a thing.
No, they definitely don't, and that's why I think that it's really up to business owners to reach out and seek independent advice. Like, I do a 30-minute free consultation for business owners. Brent Norling does a 30-minute free. Like contact me or contact Brent. Just don't put your head in the sand. That's what us lawyers are really kind of saying to people.
Yeah. if anyone who's watching or listening has got a question they'd like to ask Kate, Shan, feel free to just comment below and ask away. I can happily ask it for you. One of the ones you wanted to talk about here was class actions. There is a potential for more class actions in all jurisdictions, as everyone is in the same boat, so to speak, i.e., affected by the same event. So, what's that for?
So class actions are basically a group of people who are affected by the same event or circumstance effectively. And that's exactly what we have right now. So examples of class actions which have already been commenced are in America. I think they've actually looking at one against a cruise ship company. So cruise ship companies are going to find themselves under the hammer in terms of class actions. There's already one. Because what they did, there's one in Australia at the moment, which has been heavily talked about in the media over there, which is the Carnival Cruises, the Ruby Princess ship. And what happened with that ship is people were actually affected by the coronavirus, and they docked in Sydney and then let all the people out, like 2,500 or 3,000 people out in Sydney. So there is now a potential class action being investigated in Sydney, Australia, I think, against that particular cruise company for doing that. So that's a really interesting development in the class action space, because all those, generally people could be affected by them doing that. So it's a really kind of interesting development as to what's going to happen in this space. And I think that there will be, it's going to be gnarly. America will definitely probably be first, maybe Australia as well. And then we always kind of follow what's happening over there. So it's going to be interesting to see whether people are going to actually hold the government to account as well, because a lot of the American based thing is saying, well, the government's shut us down. The coronavirus hasn't actually shut us down. The government did by the state of emergency or the lockdowns or what have you. So that they might actually start looking at pursuing the government for the compensation or the funding, so to speak. So it's going to be a really interesting space, and it's kind of like my favorite area of law, really, because it actually helps people and people can actually get access to justice and some compensation somehow. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
It's a good point there, Kate, because you kind of wonder, the buck's got to stop somewhere, and at what point. It's really similar actually to a conversation I had not too long ago about talking about the future of law around after autonomous vehicles come online.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was like, what are you talking about? And this is, at CES and a bunch of flipping brains and shit. And they go, okay, well, think about it. You go down the road and you get hit by an autonomous car. Okay, cool. Well, if you got hit, because who do you sue? Do you sue the software company for the sensors? Do you do the car manufacturer? Do you do the telco who's doing the signals to it that wasn't fast enough? Do you do the manufacturer for that didn't get the update in time? Because it's all interconnected, you've got basically saying, 5 arguably liable parties for an event happening, and that's going to happen one day, and then who gets it sets the precedent and the tone, and as soon as that first one goes, everyone then uses that as precedent. I think is the word they're talking about. So, and this one's interesting because even that Sydney thing. I mean, clearly I'm not a lawyer, but I'm imagining their argument is, you knew it was contagious and people could pass it to other people. You knew that it could spread. You chose to let them out, and by doing so, you essentially potentially affected a whole nation because you spread it in one hit, and you chose to make that thing under the guidance not to, right? But then on the other side, if they hold them captive, then you're holding someone captive. I don't.
Yeah, well, it's going to be really interesting to find out. It's going to come down to who knew. It's going to come down to knowledge. Did they actually know that those people had the coronavirus? Did they test them? It's going to be a whole lot of questions, but it's going to be really interesting in terms of multi-party litigation. Like you say, I think we're going to see more multi-party litigation, more going after parent companies, which is like the big, how companies are structured. You've got parent companies and then all your subsidiaries. So I think we're going to see more litigation, which is suing everyone basically. And then it's going to be really interesting to see what insurance companies do, because there is actually class action insurance that you can actually get if you're a big corporate or company. Are they going to continue to underwrite? I don't think so. I think class action insurance is going to be gone.
And to the exact point, you'd know better than me, but in Christchurch after earthquakes, insurance stopped covering earthquakes, right?
That's right. They didn't stop covering earthquakes. They stopped covering some properties. So
Got
they
it.
did some. Yeah, if you were in a particular area, they said no, sorry, we're not going to cover you. That's really what happened. Yeah.
Jeez.
So
So,
that's probably what's going to happen here.
so the long story short of it is that lawyers are about to have a field day globally everywhere because it's going to be the same thing.
I
It's
would say
crazy.
litigation and class action lawyers are going to have a field day. I don't know about everyone else, but it depends what area of law you're in. I think a lot of conveyancing and property practitioner lawyers are going to be affected because they're not getting their transactions settled. So if they're not getting their transactions done, then there's no income or no money. So it's a really interesting thing because it affects different people in different ways.
Do you have like some secret Facebook closed group between a bunch of different lawyers that talk about all this crazy shit? How do lawyers secretly communicate? What's that?
I don't know. You probably want an encrypted form of communication. So Facebook Messenger, I think, is encrypted.
Okay, so
But
let's go there for a second. What's the big talking point for lawyers right now that people aren't talking about publicly? What's the bit that all lawyers are like, yo, this shit? Like, where's the weak spot, the chink in the armor that could cost a lot of people, or where's the biggest issue that people aren't talking about publicly yet?
I think to be honest, it's how many businesses are going to be affected, like the domino effect or like the pipeline effect of this, because there's already reports saying a third of businesses aren't going to survive. And if we're talking New Zealand, we're only a small country, right? So I think on the wage subsidy, there was 120,000 people claimed as sole traders or individual like companies. So if all those companies go down, we're going to be like in big trouble. Because we're
Yeah.
not a nation of big, massive corporate companies like America or Australia. We're mainly small business to medium-sized business
Yep.
operators. Yeah, I
Kind of
think that's
look.
probably the main issue at the moment is the concern about the businesses folding. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying, kind of look the GM of SME and Enterprise at BNZ. They put out this report that 97% of New Zealand businesses are small businesses with less than 20 employees.
That's
And if you're talking
right.
about 30%, that's like you're talking about like over 100,000 businesses going night night.
Yeah, that
That's
affects like I think it's
crazy.
about 1.3. I think I figured it out. Like if it was that many, just say it was 120 times two people that are affected generally because you've got your wife or your partner or your family, and then if you affect 3 to 5 people, it's about 1.3 million people that will be affected and potentially have no income. And I mean that's a big deal. I know there's the health. Everything's focusing on the health, and I can
Mm.
understand that, but they also need to focus on the economic aspects of it moving forward because it's really important.
Yeah, totally. I've got some. So this might be breaking news that's coming. I'm trying to see if I can get the technology to work. Give me one sec. Hopefully this pops up. All right, can you see that? Commercial property deferrals waivers
Oh,
mandated
that's
by
Australia. Yeah,
Australia. So this was just came out, I think today, is it? So landlords must offer rent waivers and deferral proportionate to their tenants' decline in turnover. The Prime Minister's confirmed. Oh wow.
wow, that's pretty good. So
So
Australia's
explain that to
basically.
me. Yeah. So go there.
So what they're saying is you have to like if the fair proportion if you've lost 70% of your turnover, you get a 70% rent reduction. If you've lost 50%, you get a 50% turnover. If you've lost 30%, you get a 30% reduction. So that's and deferral. So they're saying not only do you get that you're going to get deferrals. So you might be able to pay in like 6 months' time potentially. I don't know
So
what the time period is, but
that is really interesting. So this
yeah,
is
that's
this
real
is
interesting.
now would New Zealand copy paste this?
I don't know if New Zealand would do that, but I think Lloyd and I are currently closely watching what the government's going to do in this space because it's going to be interesting. It's going to affect businesses, but also commercial property owners because they have to pay their mortgages somehow or other eventually, even if they get a mortgage holiday, which is not actually really a holiday. It's actually just a deferment, but. It's going
Damn,
to be real interesting to see what happens.
that is pretty aggressive, man.
Yeah, that's pretty. Australia's probably a little bit more aggressive than us in New Zealand, I would say. So I wouldn't expect it to be exactly like that here.
That was actually sent in by Lloyd, and he said, "This is what Australia are doing." As someone said, they are late to the party, but they brought a keg.
It's a good analogy, Lloyd.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Lloyd's going to be on the show on an upcoming episode. Yeah, that is. I mean, that feels fair. If you're a business and you lost 50% of it, you get a 50% discount. But are they saying that the government would pay the remainder? Is that what they're saying?
I don't know. I haven't actually looked at all the terms of it, and maybe we can discuss it during Lloyd's upcoming discussion. But basically, it is a good development for businesses because we want businesses to keep going.
He says landlords must not terminate the lease or draw on the tenant's security. Likewise, tenants must honour the lease.
Yeah, so that's going to be real interesting, is how we're going to enforce tenants that aren't paying.
It's called the mongrel mob. Oh wait, wrong show.
Right. It might be for another day.
Jeez, man, what a crazy. Okay, cool. So that's going on now. If you're a small business right now, you're stressed out, life shit, you don't know what to do, how to do, and you've got a bunch of stuff going on. What's the first step that someone should take when they think about their legal options, or what they could or shouldn't do?
First of all, they should call someone. Call me, call Brent, call your local lawyer, call anyone, honestly, because if you don't, the first thing is to pick up the phone and talk to somebody about it. Yeah. Because, in New Zealand, people don't like talking about things. We kind of like, put our head in the sand. But if you don't talk about it, you'll never get a solution. So the sooner, the better. And I do a free 30-minute consultation, which you can email me on kate@katesheehan.co.nz, and we'll set up a Zoom or FaceTime or just on the phone.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate any other stuff you want to quickly cover. I think we've got through your 5 points. Yeah, I've been honestly, you're in the top 1% of guests that have come prepared for the show. I don't, but I just, it's like that thing. It's like, have you ever seen a cheetah stretch? No, you're just always ready to rumble. Yeah, very cool. Any other stuff you kind of want to cover, or those are the main sort of piece? I think
there was a question from Stu Hartley, my mate Stu, who runs event cover insurance. I think he had a question.
Go on a sec. Oh, the brokers. Yes.
Oh, the brokers. Yeah, we run.
Prepare for the losses of nature learning curve. I mean, I think. Yeah, these.
He's in a harsh industry. Events.
It's insurance from events, right? Yeah.
I think we might start seeing insurance for online, like cyber insurance, but a little bit of a hybrid. So for online events, which would be really cool. Like that might be the development there, I think.
What would that look like?
I think it'd be more like you run, instead of having like in-person events, you have online events where people pay to join online, and then the insurance would cover that, like just say it got cancelled or refunds, things like that, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a space a lot of people go into, and include myself, because obviously I do a bunch of different bits and pieces, and that cool. Kate, Sheehan, really appreciate talking to you and for your time. We've gone 3 minutes over your free consultation, so I will give you a fake PO box address for the additional time served. Okay,
thanks for a bit. You guys take care over there.
Love your work. See you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Kate. Mega chat, good times, good vibes, seeing a bunch of the legal side. Lesson: talk to a flippin' lawyer. Talk to your bank, talk to the lawyer, figure out what your options are. And I'm actually genuinely intrigued to see what the government in New Zealand's going to do around this thing, because it's clear this is a huge issue. If employees are getting the wage subsidy, and then there's this massive issue around, obviously businesses can't be operating, they can't be getting into the businesses, and they've got leases. This could be crippling businesses. I mean, she's saying 30% is potentially on the chopping block. That is a massive amount of New Zealand business. So I'm ridiculously interested to see what the government does about that. Good yarns, good chats, good vibes. And once again, if you haven't seen it already, Tiger King. Oh, mate, it is stuffed.